As I'm sure you're all aware by now, Rex is by far the strongest character in Future Redeemed. Sadly, in terms of gameplay, Shulk didn't get quite as much favoritism, and to me his kit feels quite lacking. With this video, I would like to build a corrected Shulk kit, which would fix these issues and make him about as strong as Rex. So, what are these issues in Shulk's kit? One of the biggest issues with Shulk's kit is that it's based heavily around the Awakening buff, where many arts are powered up based on having that buff. The problem with this is that the only way to attain Awakening in Future Redeemed is through completing a Unity combo, which requires you to break, topple, launch, and then use the Unity combo on an enemy. Enemy reaction resistance aside, by the time you've already launched your enemy, you could probably just be chain attacking and killing them. Another less concrete issue is that, to me at least, Shulk's kit doesn't feel very fun to play. He's just a very generic tank character. So, how can we fix these issues? Well, first, I want to try to make his kit a bit more synergistic within itself, as well as having a bit more synergy with the rest of the party's kits. In addition to this, I'd like to have his power be about on par with Rex's. Finally, I want to make sure that his kit is reflective of his past self, as well as somewhat reflective of Dunban, since, of course, as we know, he's now a dodge tank and takes a lot of similarities from Dunban. So starting there, looking back at Shulk, I usually see him as a sort of supportive attacker, where he's using Monado arts to buff the party, such as armor or enchants, while using his attacks to recharge his Monado. Looking at Dunban, he is a dodge tank, but one thing I think a lot of people overlook are Dunban's auras, specifically Peerless, where Dunban is actually one of the best party members in the game for that specific reason. He makes the rest of your party so much stronger just by having him on the team, in addition to his ability to tank. With that all out of the way, let's get into the specifics of what we can change to make Shulk better. Starting with right back at you. This skill is really bad, so I'm going to replace it with a new skill called Glorious Future. This skill will make it so that whenever an ally is incapacitated, it will completely fill Shulk's talent gauge. Now, this would be at the highest levels, so at the first level it might just refill it to 50%. So the idea behind this skill is that in addition to being a reference to Xenoblade Chronicles, with one of Shulk's skills in that game, it would also synergize really well with Rex. Rex is always taking aggro and going down, so this skill would ideally allow Shulk and Rex to sort of bounce off each other, where whenever Rex takes the aggro, Shulk is able to take it back using his talent art. The next skill I wanted to change was Sword of Reprisal. Rather than its current effect, it will have the following. For each buff applied to Shulk, the enemy's resistance to debuffs will reduce by 10%. Debuffs are a pretty big issue in Xenoblade 3 in general, but Shulk's kit comes with two debuffs, Bleed and Target Lock, so having this skill will make a bit more sense later, but ideally would allow him to apply those debuffs to the enemy more easily. The final skill I wanted to change was Mechanical Rhythm. Its new effect is that whenever Shulk applies a buff to himself, it extends the duration of all buffs already on him by 2 seconds. You can start to see this kit taking shape here, where Shulk is going to play as a supportive tank, applying debuffs and buffs. So having discussed his skills, and specifically Glorious Future, I think we should take a look at what his new talent art will be. Base game, it's an AoE Pierce effect, which gets a bonus from being Awakening. However, as we discussed, getting Awakening is quite difficult, and it's just not generally worth it. So, the new effects on this talent art will be that it is still AoE, but rather than getting a bonus from being awakened, it will grant you Awakening right at the start of activating the talent art. In addition to this, I'm replacing the Pierce effect with something equally powerful. Shulk will instead get a boost of damage on this art equal to the number of buffs on himself, similar to the Uni Ouroboros skill. I believe that this new talent art will do a lot to fix Shulk. For starters, he can actually get Awakening now, which allows him to recharge his Gavesi arts, as well as increasing his damage and tank ability. On top of that, it'll stack well with Mechanical Rhythm, allowing him to stack up a lot of buffs and increase his damage over time. Finally, with Glorious Future, he'll be able to charge this talent art a lot easier, so whenever Rex goes down, he can access Awakening immediately. Moving on to his Kavesi arts, I've left Stream Edge and Slit Edge unchanged. Stream Edge is already great as it is, Break is very important to this combat system, and Slit Edge is going to be much better with the Bleed effect now that he can reduce enemy debuff resistance. Heavy Rush, on the other hand, I've decided to completely replace with a new art called Monado Enchant. This art would function identically to the Signifier class's art, which allows it to share all its buffs with all the rest of your party members. I'm sure you're all well aware of how strong the Signifier arts are, so that will need no further explanation. Moving on to the Agnian arts, we have Minato Rage, which I've decided to leave alone. Minato Armor, on the other hand, I've decided to make a slight change to. Rather than making it an Armor Veil field, I will simply grant Shulk the Armor Veil buff, which he can then spread around with Minato enchant. Minato Purge I've decided to completely replace though. While it's a good skill, it doesn't synergize super well with the rest of his kit. Instead, it'll now be Minato's Speed, which will grant him Decoy. For his fusion arts, I've decided to leave them all alone. Slit Edge just makes all the effects AoE, which is good already. Minato's Speed, formerly Minato Purge, would inflict debuffs when fused, which works well with Sword of Reprisal. Minato Armor can already grant the Evasion Up or Power Charge, so as you can see, it's already set up pretty well for this new kit I've laid out. That all said, I think that's all I would do to make Shulk more viable. It specs him more into being a support character, allowing him to hold aggro by either having a lot of buffs to reduce the enemy's resistance to target lock, or to use his raw damage output from his talent art. Of course, in chain attacks that won't be an option, but he'll still be able to spread power charge around, as well as other buffs. Feel free to let me know what you think of these changes in the comments section below. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.